Hi YouTube, welcome. Waifu released a tier list. I actually helped with that tier list because he asked me for advices and shit, so let's watch this video, shall we?
I know many of you have been bugging us for a tier list since we did our Rage Gaming video, and
I am receiving these questions like all the time, so maybe I'm going to answer. Making tier lists when you know what you're talking about is a case of very tough moral dilemma, because doing general tier lists is dog shit, as like various different tools and setups might actually affect like placing of individual weapons and also like the context in which you are using them, duels, PvE, PvP, invasions, whatever stuff, like depending like per case, placing on the tier lists might be completely different, and it's just very hard to make one without spreading brain dead and stupid information. But I definitely should be doing these because people love these. Like, people really want to listen to this type of content for whatever reason. Anyway, let's continue.
we haven't really gotten to it because we felt there were more interesting topics to talk about. But seeing how many requests we've gotten since our last 2 videos that covered tier lists, and after losing our faith in humanity with the Gorgonites we found in Seamless Co-op, I believe it's due time we give our real 2 cents on the matter so people can finally put that rivers of blood away and invest in less repulsive equipment. First of all, we are going to put on the list the 10 best weapons in the game for invasions and duels. We're not going to rank all the weapons in the game because that's completely pointless. Like, seriously, some weapons are literally the same thing, but a tiny bit different.
Shots fired
like
at Rusty.
Great Sword and the Banished Knight Great Sword. The only difference between these 2 is just a little bit of damage and range. All the weapons in the list will be judged individually, with only one exception, which is going to be analysed as a set. We're going to take into account the weapon's moveset, the weapon's damage capability, and its versatility in different combat situations. For
it's worth to mention here, like, Waifu says they are not going to consider setups besides like a one weapon on the tier lists, and this is another thing, yeah? Setups. For example, halberds. Let's say Banished Knight Halberd. How good is Banished Knight Halberd on its own, and how much better it is with the dagger offhand, or like a hand axe offhand? Yeah, honestly, it's completely different scoring, and it is so hard to actually judge weapons and actually not spread misinformation to people, because there is so many variables depending like on like when the weapon is gonna to shine and what's not. For example, here in the background we have seen like a Gags gameplay, and Gags with, for example, like on its own may be very strong, but it all depends on the latency and stuff. But it might become that much more powerful in certain scenarios if you're just gonna get yourself dagger offhand and swap to one hand. So yeah, it's actually like setups are so insanely important, and without judging the setups, it's very hard to overall judge the power of the weapon, honestly. But at the same time, when you're judging the setups, then you are not judging the weapon on its own anymore. So yeah, tough thing. Like, overall, I was helping Waifu to make the concept for that video, and there was so many versions because it is so hard to chew this topic without just spreading misinformation to the viewers.
For a player of higher than average skill, the idea is that the weapons are compared when players of similar or equal skill level fight each other with these weapons, as judging it for different levels of skill won't make much sense. Think of it this way. If you, using a D tier weapon, had to fight yourself using an A tier weapon, the version of you using the A tier weapon would most likely win. In this case, the tiers we're going to work with are A tier, S tier, double S tier, and triple S tier, because all the weapons are great. Having explained this, and without further ado, let's jump right into the damn thing.
Waifu was so happy to show me this transition, by the way. Like, with some JoJo character in the background.
The first one in the list is the exception that the blue smurf mentioned before. The fingerprint stone shield. Also known as the shield named Finger. Finger is a little bit lacking if you use it by itself, as it is very slow, telegraphed, and lacks any respectable range. However, if you use it as a shield, though, it becomes much more interesting.
Duh.
With the second highest guard boost in the game, Finger can be very good for passive-type turtling playstyles, if used correctly. Weapons like thrusting swords and heavy thrusting swords can be used for shield poking at the correct moments to basically negate many playstyles, and guard counter builds using daggers like the Cincadea can be quite effective in low latency against slower weapons. Its advantage over the verdigris.
By the way, this is this setup, yeah, the dagger main hand and fingerprint offhand is so fun because the R2 of the Cincadea and other daggers actually breaks the poison one. So yeah, you have a tool to just break poison one while one-handed, using the weapon one-handed, and yeah, the shield just negates so many setups. For example, Rakshasa is one of these setups that actually can be completely nullified, like reduced to nothing, if you are just going to have a shield. So yeah, that's kind of funny how it works in this game.
It can be quite effective in low latency against slower weapons. Its advantage over the verdigris shield, which has the highest guard boost, is that it can be infused with different ashes of war for more versatility on top of its madness buildup. Hell, if you infuse it with bleed, it will have both bleed and madness. On
Funny
top
gimmick.
Of an arcane scaling that will increase the buildups of said status effects. Finger performs quite well in duels, despite being countered by Starfists with the Hammer Talisman.
I'm gonna give you a certain anecdote related to it. When I and Waifu were participating in the Twitch Rivals, and that there was a day of 1v1s, Waifu had initial idea to use the other shields. I already forgot the name of it. The one with higher guard boost than Fingerprint shield. And just shield poke everyone to the oblivion. Waifu dueled me, and I swapped to the Starfist. Completely obliterated his guard with the Starfist and the Hammer Talisman, and then Waifu never brought the shield poke to the entire tournament again. He completely dropped the idea of using it.
Starfist with the Hammer Talisman.
Yeah, like,
but it's not so
you can just kind of mash,
A
yeah.
turtling playstyle simply cannot function too well in a scenario with multiple enemies, even if said enemies lack brain activity. And the fact that shield poking severely penalizes your stamina, getting guard broken when fighting a gank is pretty much guaranteed. It's a bit hard to master. The damage output of the playstyle is good, but not great. And the only scenario where it shines greatly is in duels. Despite that, it's the best of its class and a very solid setup for dueling.
I just want to mention before he's going to rate it that you using the shield poke itself might be strong, but the fingerprint shield is especially insane if you are just using one-handed weapon without the shield poke. Like using the halberd, using the like, let's say some sort of the shamshir, something like that, is actually insanely viable, especially in certain matchups.
For invasions, it would be A tier. And for duels, it would be double S tier.
Yeah, I mean, this rating sounds about right.
On to the next one. The Banished Knight Halberd is, by far, the best halberd in Elden Ring. It possesses the good halberd moveset, the one with where it pokes your pee-pee instead of bonking your head. Amazing damage with strength builds, and it's the 5th longest halberd in the game. The reason it stands over Commander's Standard, which is basically BKH but longer and stronger, is
I wouldn't say, okay, so like this is actually this particular case, yeah? For example, Banished Knight Halberd on the average is probably like better, but the Commander Standard is so freaking insane to use it as the swap weapon to catch up on people because of its length and damage. For example, like if you want to play neutral, then Banished Knight Halberd probably gonna be better. If you want to play, like in invasions, for example, yeah, in the invasions, I would say I would probably use more often Commander's Banner, and in the duels, I probably wouldn't use it at all. So like those are like these small things which makes certain weapons just better than others and so on, and another reason why it is so hard to make the tier lists. On top of that, for example, if you are using like a setup with certain weapon in the main hand and in the offhand you are using the newly added thrusting shields. Then on the offhand, like you have that Ash that allow you to basically hit the true combos with like from the R1s and so on. Yeah, so yeah, like let's say that you're using CGS, you click R1, you then click L2, and you essentially hit your opponent twice, have a true combo related to the fact that like the thrusting shields in the offhand like actually combo of like plenty of weapons and neutral R1s. So because of that, in such scenario, since you cannot really use Ash like at all, because you have, well, you have the shield on as an Ash, then Commander Standard is just that much better than Banished, because it deals more damage and it's longer. And like there is no competition like at all in such case.
Because it can be infused with Ashes of War. Commander's Standard basically has no combat Ash of War, and this can be very detrimental when considering that Ashes like Flaming Strike have amazing synergy with the weapon class. The running light attack is so amazingly strong that it can easily be considered the best running attack in the game.
Well, it used to be, but then Great Katanas happened.
It synergizes perfectly with 3 of the best talismans in the game, and
okay, so here is about synergy. Waifu, from now on, gonna be judging nothing but singular weapon itself. And honestly, like, Halbert's going to have relatively low position on the tier lists because of that, exactly. Because it's not the weapon that's doing good on its own. It's a weapon that's working good only in case if it is a setup, part of something else. Like, let's say, of dagger, of rapier, of hand axe, and so on and so forth, yeah? So like, Spear Tally, of course, is great. The crossed tree is great, but two-handed sword talisman in such cases usually not. Like a two-handed moveset overall is, whereas gives you the hyper armor, it is just not that good.
Best talismans in the game, and it's great for chase downs and finishing up opponents on both low and high latency. The weapon also offers hyper armor on two-handed attacks, which is great to fight silly mashers in both invasions and duels.
Yeah.
How could I lose? I mashed as hard as I could.
The weapon plays exactly the same on both combat scenarios, obviously having bigger trouble against multiple targets. It's relatively simple to use, and dealing big damage with a few good running attacks is simpler than it looks. The downsides would be that it's a somewhat slow weapon that can be easily strafed by good players, reason why it performs best when paired with a hand axe. Taking all of this into account, the Banished Knight Halberd ends up in A tier for both duels and invasions.
Like, if you are going to consider it as the weapon on its own, then yeah, makes sense.
Solid, but not the best of the bunch. The favorite of many from soft fans out there, Nuts from Burke's Sword is one of the best weapons in the game for both duels and invasions.
I wouldn't call it like one of the best in duels. It's solid, but in the invasions it is great, yeah. On highlight, no. I mean, it still can work on the highlight if you force the trades with RKR and the tally stacking, but yeah. It's hard to actually correctly rate this weapon, honestly, in duels. In invasions, it is goated. Like, the fact, like, you have smaller hitbox than you would have with the, let's say, Clean Rod, Thrusting Sword. Like, it's one of the big reasons why this weapon is just not that good overall, especially in duels. It might be very junky to play with. Seamlet, GG.
And despite what some uninformed
Seamlets are different breed,
it's
dude.
not because of Lion's Claw.
No? What you mean? I thought like Lion's Claw is overpowered.
Dude, what the fuck?
Being one of the long...
I mean, honestly, you know that this clip is actually very unrealistic because the guy has 41 MS to waifu and no one lives that close to Argentina.
Dude, What the fuck?
Being one of the longest colossal swords in the game and boasting absolutely bonkers damage when infused with strength, Nut's sword is a fantastic tool for trading into nearly anything and come out on top thanks to its absurdly high hyper armor and poise damage values. Its wide-range light attacks cover a huge 180 degrees range in front of you, making it easy to hit multiple people in invasions, while the crouch poke attack is super good for high damage trades and roll-catching panicky goobers. It benefits from both the two-handed sword talisman and the spear talisman.
The DLC buffed Gugs so incredibly much because of all the tallies. The crouch attack tally, the two-handed tally are like, you know, only few. You have Leda's armor, I think, yeah, it's like additional 5 or 10%. Essentially, RKR, Royal Knight's Resolve, got nerfed by half in its damage, and all that damage is brought back because of the utility from the DLC.
Increasing damage numbers even further on crouch pokes, and can use Waves of Darkness, which is probably the best Ash of War in the game for invasions. The weapon's
the best get off me tool, most likely.
only downside lies in the fact that it's very slow to attack, so good players will dodge most hits on reaction. This also makes it not so great in scenarios when you have to finish up your opponent, as they can easily outrun you. Regardless, it's a very easy to use weapon, pretty solid in both invasions and duels. Solid A tier for both categories.
I would probably put it higher for invasions.
This weapon has the sexiest curves you'll ever see, but don't let its beauty fool you. It will absolutely...
Alright, so there was a guy on the screen called Mr. Nugget. It's just that instead of nugget, there was different word that makes especially American audience and American companies absolutely fucking crazy. So yeah, we skipping that part, and yeah. Let's continue with the video. By the way, I contacted Waifu, told him that, hey, YouTube probably gonna be upset at you for this, and Waifu told me that he is going to use YouTube editor to remove that part. He essentially didn't know that it might actually be bad for the video, or like, you know, it might actually like straight up like strike his channel or whatever. But well, you know, you gotta understand that funny N-word is essentially like only so upsetting to Americans or people that are very attached to the American culture. For the rest of the world, people just don't fucking care. But yeah, let's continue.
A very unique moveset with awesome forward momentum and broad swings. These swings are incredibly fast, so fast that some people may eat 2 hits in a row before being able to roll away. All of the Shamshira's attacks are great for spacing and chasing people, becoming only stronger with the correct setup. The two-handed sword talisman, of course, and the rotten-winged sword insignia for its consecutive attacks. Not only is it capable of quick, insane damage, but it's also a roll-catching machine thanks to its perfect moveset. The weapon just feels so smooth to use that you'll find yourself very comfortable in most combat scenarios.
This is the type of weapon that actually, like, might be absolute detriment to other people or just like a normal dueling weapon, depending per case, because if you are not going to meet requirement of 87.5 poise breakpoint, then you are screwed. This shit has one of the best, if not the best, backswings in the game. It's only probably daggers have better. So like, I'm talking here about frame data. So like, if you are not going to have certain amount of poise, this weapon practically always going to stomp you unless you have light roll.
Sadly, even though it doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, it's a bit lower on the list, only because the weapons that follow it are simply better at everything the Shamshir does. For invasions, it's a solid A tier, and for duels, it can be regarded as S tier.
Yeah. Okay, so Shamshir, it's really like, you know, it's really depends. It's just like you have certain things that are absolutely broken about it, and it actually getting insanely strong in the hands of players that are just very good. But overall, if I recall correctly, the thing about Shamshir in particularly relation to this tier list is the fact that you have certain weapons that require you to use less of your brain and dominate more. So yeah, let's go to these weapons, I guess.
This weapon needs no introduction, as we have thoroughly discussed its cancerous nature in our previous video. But in case you missed it, Rakshasa's Great Katana is the only Great Katana in Elden Ring that possesses hyper armor, boasting also a special heavy attack moveset different to that of other Great Katanas. All of its attacks have incredible range and speed. It's very good for trading. It's very good for roll catching. And landing a few hits on anyone will most likely guarantee a kill. It can keep priority against most builds due to having high stun on all of its attacks. It can tank up to colossal swords with its unique Ash of War, and the weapon's supposed defense debuff hardly makes up for how strong the weapon is thanks to its innate hyper armor, damage potential, and bleed buildup.
Yeah, this is something that really have to be changed about Rakshasa. So, like, since you are gaining defenses when you're in the hyper armor, the weapon's property of you essentially losing defenses when you are in the hyper armor just doesn't fucking make sense, because you're losing way less than you should. Like, in the process, like, there is practically no difference in the incoming damage when you're trading with someone. It's like 7% or whatever, I don't remember. Like, it's like, you know, it could be considered a lot, but when you are trading and then you're gaining the freaking priority, it's always worth it.
However, despite being insanely good and easy to use, Rakshasa's Great Katana gets heavily countered by great shields such as Fingerprint. If that's not on the menu, then yes. This weapon is very good for both duels and invasions, being a solid S tier in both categories.
Another shield enters the list of the best weapons in Elden Ring, although this one is used as a weapon rather than a blocking tool. The Carrion Thrusting Shield could easily be the best dueling weapon in Elden Ring, if not for a tiny little thing that we'll discuss further into the video. This weapon is a thrusting shield.
No shit!
A new category added in the DLC. And if you recall our last video talking about them, you may remember that they were absolutely fucking broken before the patch. Now both thrusting shields are a shadow of their former selves, but the Carrion Thrusting Shield is still a monster, boasting slightly higher guard boost than the dueling shield. The Carrion Thrusting Shield...
By the way, I completely don't understand the balancing idea of From Software here. Like, there is not even a single thing that Dueling Shield is better at than Carrion Thrusting Shield, as far as I understand. Both can be infused, or, like, you know, you can have, like, ashes on them. Like, the Carrion Thrusting Shield has better guard boost, better damage. It's just like a better shield. The only difference is that, like, it requires the additional intelligence, and that's about it. But, like, requirements, yeah. But like, if you would want to make dedicated build around these two, then, like, Carrion Thrusting Shield is just like superior version, and that's it. And that's funny, like, because, yeah, of course, game is working like that. You have very often tools in the game that are just inferior or superior versions of the another one in the class. But dude, we have only 2 thrusting shields in the entire game. Like, this is entire weapon class. Like, at this point, just make only one, dude.
Slightly higher guard boost than the dueling shield. The Carrion Thrusting Shield can both block and defend at the same time, with a slight stamina penalty each time a hit is blocked while attacking. It may seem like a very big con, but when managed properly, the weapon is absolutely asinine to deal with. No weapon in the game can even come close to challenging the ridiculous defensive and offensive capabilities of...
Vast majority of these fights are recorded with me sitting somewhere on the walls on the side, because we were, like, for example, like, you know, recording footage for Waifu's video, and then someone, like, end up invading. And that's, like, when you see footage in Church of L, that essentially means it's from the, yeah, recording session, basically.
Of the Carrion Thrusting Shield. Not only does it have this annoying quirk, but also can deal vomitive levels of damage when combined with the two-handed sword talisman and the spear talisman. Furthermore, its guarding capabilities can be increased with the Great Shield talisman, making the battle even more obnoxious for your opponent. In invasions, though, it is not a bad weapon per se, but it definitely doesn't shine as bright.
Per se or per se? Because, like, the original pronunciation is per se, but English language butchered this sentence, or, like, saying.
The fact that you can be attacked from multiple angles at the same time severely reduces your defensive capabilities, plus multiple blocks while attacking will most likely result in a guard break. Despite that, it's still piss easy to use and can deal with most weapons in the game with ease. For duels, this is the second best weapon in the game, earning a triple S tier. For invasions, it's another S tier weapon. You most likely love this weapon already because it means foot in Spanish. And we all know that as a FromSoft fan, you just love that shit. Pata was introduced in the shadow of the Erdtree DLC and already got its dedicated video showcasing how busted it is. In case you didn't know, Pata is a fist-type weapon. Usually, fist-type weapons have this much range. On the other hand,
this is ridiculous. Look at the thickness of this bullshit. You cannot even strafe it. Like, the running attack deals 150 poise damage. One of the blades deals 120, under 130. The offhand one deals... I don't remember actually which one deals how much. But yeah, it's... Like, the funniest thing is like how thick these hitboxes are. Especially if you're gonna compare them to, for example, Colossal Swords and crouch attacks of the Colossal Swords that got like purposely nerfed. Like, this shit is so ridiculous, man.
This much range. I think you're starting to see the point, right? Not only this weapon has the speed of fists and the range of some fucking spears, making it possibly the best chasing weapon in the game, it also has the capability of dealing a buttload of damage thanks to its bugged DLC damage parameters. To add insult to injury, the running heavy attack can...
It was actually the... DLC params actually got fixed for practically everything.
Combo into a standing heavy attack, a feature that was previously patched on the rest of the fist weapons in the game.
Yeah, like, this is kind of funny how the running R2 into R2 combo actually does exist only on Pata, literally the strongest run-up fist weapon in the game, whereas it got removed from everything else. GG from software, great decision, not gonna lie.
It is so easy to use and so damn oppressive that for some gamers this weapon is borderline cheating. It has a similar performance in both duels and invasions, as it can deal with both experienced and new players all together with the same ease. A solid S tier in both categories. The Toothpick of Doom has kept its status as one of the most cowabunga weapons in the game since launch, and it's still to this day incredibly asinine to deal with. Clean Rot Night Sword is the longest and most damaging thrusting sword in the game, a weapon category infamous for its quick pierce.
Look at this fucking hitbox. Like, this is so ridiculous, man. You cannot strafe it for shit. It deals astronomous amount of fucking damage. And it got even buffed in the recent patch when it comes to its 200 poise damage. GG from software, good decision. Much love to you. I hope like for more great patches in the future.
Attacks and high synergy with most damage enhancing tools in the game. The weapon is so goddamn fast that it can mold even the sanest and most calm of players into a hairless mess.
And good stop. I just wanted to mention Bloodhound Step. So since Bloodhound Step is utility Ash of War with iframes, you basically don't have to even bother about using the something like, let's say, Shard of Alexander. Yeah, you are not gonna benefit more. So you have like essentially, for the sake of to fully utilize the weapon, you have like one additional free slot. Normally, in a lot of cases, using Shard of Alexander is very optimal. Here, in case of this weapon, since Bloodhound Step is the best Ash for the Clean Rod, you kind of you just getting the benefit of getting yourself different tally that will most likely increase your damage.
If used in conjunction with Bloodhound Step, we're looking at the fastest attack in the game with the lowest recovery, meaning
the crouch attack, it's like 8 or 9 frames startup.
Meaning that this weapon can completely bully slow weapons and can match faster weapons with the same ease.
Oh, Shaq gonna get owned? Oh, okay. Wasn't shown.
To use, as most times simply mashing R1
Maybe
or
later.
fishing for crouch pokes with Bloodhound Step is enough to get the job done, as that's all that's needed, including the rest of its arsenal, only further increases the skill ceiling and capabilities of the weapon.
Yeah, this is actually true. So what happened here is I R1'd the guy, he rolled away, dashed on him, and roll cut him out of the BHS.
The skill ceiling.
Like, this is actually one of the ways how you can utilize Backhand Step in the insane way. Like, this Ash is just borderline broken despite it being nerfed long time ago.
Capabilities of the weapon, making it a fearsome tumor in most combat scenarios. For invasions, the weapon is the best of the S tier ones, and for duels it's in double S tier, up there with the finger shield.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. The balls are insane! Starfist is a fist-type weapon with the unique property of being able to beat the living shit out of anyone if used properly. What lacks in range makes up for more than enough, with its insanely strong damage potential. The heavy attack of the Starfist can deal bollocks amounts of damage to people with
Do you see the armor set of this person? He received 720 damage in this armor set.
heavy armor, let alone gamers that are not fully optimized on its defenses, and will always stun gamers, regardless of how much poise they have. Hyper armor weapons can be dealt with using endure and trading to your heart's content as you watch their health bars melt into a yellow fucky mess. They do require some spacing and critical thinking when using them, as simply mashing like a dummy won't get you the win sometimes.
It sometimes will if you're gonna click R2.
But with a little bit of practice, you will start to see how strong they are. They can even counter shield users easily, because they can deal very good stamina damage, allowing for easy guard breaks. They're pretty good for chases, as well as both running attacks have very good forward momentum, speed and damage. And eventually, the bleed build-up may proc and cause some serious injuries. They are a fantastic weapon in both categories, earning a well-deserved place in double S tier for invasions and triple S tier for duels.
So I have like tough decision here myself if I wouldn't put Clean Rod exequo with the Starfist when we are also like considering Bloodhound Step into equation, because like Starfists are currently the most used weapons in the competitive play because they are not banned, and Clean Rod is not only banned but also like the Bloodhound Step is banned, so the best synergy is actually like not there, but like that's probably would be somewhat equal matchup. But yeah, Starfists are insane. It's the nuclear R2 is just that good, man.
Did you ever as a kid grab 2 sticks with a reverse grip and pretend to be a badass ninja or something? Nope. Well, you can now relive that experience in the game with the Backhand Blades. This is currently the most broken weapon for PvP in the game for many reasons. Its overall moveset is insanely fast, with huge forward momentum on most attacks. The crouch attack has the same quick attack animation as daggers, but with the damage of fucking great spears.
Oh no.
The running heavy attack hits 4 times and is capable of completely obliterating people with the right setup. It has infinite chase potential thanks to its unique and weird running light attack, and it can beat the Carrion thrusting shield with the Backhand Blades exclusive Ash of War called Blind Spot, as it can both dodge its attacks and bypass its defensive capabilities. They require quite a bit of practice to master, but once you learn how to tighten that reverse grip on those 2 long and girthy handles, it is pretty much Jover for most weapon categories. By far the best weapon in Elden Ring, being double S tier for invasions and triple S tier for duels. And with that, the list is complete. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Remember that these weapons were judged when used by someone.
So yeah, it's what's worth to mention about Backhand Blades is you can also like power stance them instead of using them into hands, because yeah, like those are like a paired weapons, which means that if you're gonna like to hand them, you basically have kind of power stance type of moveset, but not exactly. If you're gonna like get yourself actually 2 copies of the weapon, put one in the main hand, second in the offhand, then you have like a faster recovery on the crouch L1, which is like the same as crouch R1 in such case. It has like less of the tracking, but at the same time it's just insanely fucking good for different reasons. It's because you have like the additional moveset of the regular neutral R1s and so on, which is insane. So yeah, it's Backhand Blades at the given moment are borderline broken weapon class. It can deal practically with everything, and yeah, like you have Swift Slash, which is still insanely fucking broken, just not many people use it because it's not like as broken as it used to be. And on top of that, yeah, like the blind spot is just insane, dude. Like you have freaking counter attack with the iframes on hit that goes through the shield. That one is fucking stupid as shit, man. It's just crazy. Anyway, like this tier list was fine. Like it's somewhat well justified, and I enjoyed that video. So GG.